Today, more than ever, online teaching and learning has become essential. And in the last few months, it has been the only means to deliver education to every home. I have to pause for a second to make sure that our colleague Farah Faqih is ready to start with the sign language. Farah, are we clear on the sign language?
She is.
Okay. So, as Tim Berners-Lee said, the power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. While online delivery saved the academic year for many students, the question remains, is digital delivery inclusive? Is it reaching everyone equally? To answer this question, we are excited today to host this discussion with leading experts in educational technology and digital accessibility. Please welcome with me My Spilling, a council member from British Assistive Technology Association and an advisory board member for ABLE. Miles brings to us long experience in helping people find assistive technology solutions to overcome disability. He also provides assessment, training, and strategy advice to schools. Also, Rabia Baalbaki, the president at the Lebanese Association for IT Professionals. He also leads roles at the Professional Computer Association, the Lebanese Digital Transformation Network, and the Lebanese ICT Federation. Rabia is a national digital transformation strategist and a sustainability projects coach. He plays today a key role in forming the distance learning strategic plan in Lebanon. Jeremy Seda, the IT accessibility coordinator at North Idaho College and an advisory board member for ABLE. Jeremy is a leading professional in IT accessibility, universal design, web and rich media development. He is also an active member in the EDUCAUSE IT accessibility group. Rami Farran, the IT academic services director at AUB. Rami is an IT leader in higher education. He is an expert in building and executing strategy for digital learning, computational research, applications architecture, and solutions development. As a beginning, let us start first with defining what is digital accessibility in brief. Rami, how about you help us with that?
Sure, Maha. Thank you for the introductions, by the way. Just setting the grounds for digital accessibility in brief. I would say that, digital accessibility is the ability of an internet resource, wherever this might be, such as like a page, web application, and for mobile applications, electronic documents, the ability of all these to be easily navigated and understood by a wide range of users, including those who have visual impairment, hearing impairment, motor or cognitive disabilities, etc. Today, with the pandemic, the range of users with needs has grown. Why? Think about people at home studying or working who have intermittent internet access, such as in Lebanon. Sometimes people are facing electricity cuts also in Lebanon. Think about those who have no access to cameras or microphones, students at homes with no access to cameras or to microphone, whether, be it K to 12 students or university students. The process of designing all the resources to be accessible to all these types of people who need it is what defines digital accessibility. I would say that there are many assistive software and assistive hardware tools available in the market, or for free, to help someone with special need to successfully interact with digital devices and content. And there are a set of standards and guidelines for tool designers and for software designers and software developers to make their creation, whether be it a tool or whether be it a web page or just a document, to make it digitally accessible to specific needs. So, for example, for web applications and web content and web development, a mature set of standards is called WCAG. It's currently at version 2.1, which is basically web content accessibility guidelines. It covers a wide range of recommendations for making web content, for example, more accessible. Following these guidelines will make the content more accessible for a wider range of people with specific abilities or with disabilities, including accommodations for vision impairment, like blindness or low vision, and for hearing impairment, like deafness and hearing loss, or for limited movement. So, for example, if you're using the mouse, you might want to cater for people who cannot use the mouse by making your application tab responsive. Speech disabilities and combination of some of these or all of these, and some accommodation for learning disabilities and cognitive limitations as well. So this is what kind of defines digital accessibility. It's basically working towards making your creation, whatever the creation is. It can be a simple document or it can go all the way to a sophisticated tool, making this usable by a wide range of users, including those who have specific impairments.
Thank you, Rami.
That's how I would define, digital accessibility.
Thank you. So, what are the commonly used tools for online education? And what are the main accessibility requirements for these tools? Here, I would like to address this question to Miles.
Thank you, Mahat. And it's a great joy to be a part and privilege to be a part of this. I think just to emphasize what Rami was saying, browser is the first requirement, but it's essential that whatever accessibility is built in is considered at the core of the browser. And as most browsers have single sign-ons, this can be extremely useful to those students who are very much challenged by the technology that's around there. What I would say too is, in terms of what content is available, there's many cloud-based solutions. And in this present crisis, it's been really helpful because it is actually, I'd say that with much sympathy for those who have suffered. But there has been one up in the sense that content has had to be delivered online. And our government produced a list of resources. Now, I have placed a whole list of resources in the chat window where you can find links to our journey. And there is a great deal of information there that you can call upon. I particularly like the links to learning like Oak Academy have produced. And in terms of what tools that are there online to help you, schools and colleges and universities are using things like Padlet, padlet.com for screen sharing, Nearpod for quizzes and polls, Poll Anywhere, which allows your mobile phone to contribute, and QR codes. All of these systems are not linear, they're engaging tools which incorporate a mix and match. And if it's permissible, can I just share these slides here and just explain the process that you might be involved with in terms of the challenge that faces you? Maybe we should refer to that later on as we talk about how this applies to the Lebanon.
Sure, Farah is ready. At your mark.
Okay. Well, I see it as 3 steps and 3 stages to implement into places like the Lebanon. You need to have understanding of student needs. You then discover the AT solution, but then you discover that there's limited time to train. You can actually not achieve all of that. And so online training materials that exist that support the student in their home, in their own time, like Find My Flow we've referred to, They are very helpful to engage that student to relearn again. Next slide. Stage 2 is once you have that one-to-one solution or a range of one-to-one solutions where the student is at the core of the solution, then you want to roll it out to the institution. But certainly when you consider that, it's winning hearts and minds of those who are decision makers to make that happen. In other words, they have to be convinced that this is going to make a difference and that the amount of money they invest in it will bear dividends. So it's really important that we've got that. Next slide. And finally, stage 3, change has to be managed. In other words, I would suggest pilots of small scale before you roll out any new assistive technology of any kind. And these small scale pilots will enable things to be put in place and that the necessary support mechanisms have been set up. It's not just what's on the computer, it's how the support is delivered and the strategy implemented. So really, that goes to the last bit, last slide. That's come out a bit differently. I'm sorry you can't see there. But the student should have choices. In the same way that you have a choice at a meal, you can choose that particular tool or you might choose a different one. But the choice is yours. And how you implement those choices is by learning it, applying it practically, and then it gets embedded. And that is a good learning model. And I would advise the use of change management people to help you manage that across any institution in Lebanon so that it can actually be truly practically embedded. And of course, there are problems across the way, so it's a complete sort of integrated way of approach. So really, that's just some hints and tips on how you might put those tools into practice. Over to you, Maha.
Thank you, Miles. Rabia Balbaki, I think you wanted to comment or.
Yeah. Yes, please let me share my screen. Farah, it's possible. Okay, I'm trying to share my screen from here.
Farah, did it work?
Still deactivated. I will stop.
Rabia, if you want, you can send me your slides and I can do it instead.
Okay, okay. Right now, and at the same time, let me, even I can't share the file here. Huh? It's all disactivated, so I will share. Okay. Even sharing files is disactivated.
For our audience, I would like to tell them that we can share material, of course, later. We will send them to.
Start talking, and at the same time, I will share it with Farah because I have many slides to share with you. But first, let me talk about digital network or digital transformation network. Actually, digital transformation network was established in June 2000 and under the parliament umbrella with the support of Minister for Democracy. The establishing and of course many of the syndicates related to digital transformation and many associations had joining the network, and in the same time they all worked together in order to make the e-governance. How e-governance means transparency, it means e-democracy, it means everything that anybody aims to do it in the future, the country itself. But because we faced Corona situation, the first thing we did, and I will share the presentation with you, we did like in October under the parliament, like supporting and enforcing regarding to the curriculum development. And this was the start, because EdTech plays a very important role in the future of the education. Then Corona just enforced us more, because the only solution was distance learning and e-learning and digital content. And I want to add something more for the content accessibility styles. You can make the simulators, you can make videos, you can make sounds, images. And challenges in Lebanon, Maha, was actually there's many. First, you need a content development platform, and it's not easy. You need to have some aids or donation. They started in January 2020, and then they changed a little bit on the, let's say, on of works of the donations, to be basically concentrate more on the teacher skills and on the content itself, assets or premises of the schools. So the many challenges we faced during this with the people who wants to involve and wants to develop the curriculum in the right way. Same time, you have many barriers. You have to respect the unions, the teacher unions, the private sector unions, the syndicates, all the civil communities exist in Lebanon. And here, Digital Transformation Network, they gathered more than 50 associations and syndicates transformation, and they started together working on how to support. Actually, the minister asked us to, for him to create a strategic plan, because we don't have it, a strategic plan for distance learning. And we talked about main, let's say, stakeholders or inputs in order to make it happen. Now we are trying to have an action plan for every barriers and every, let's say, we can provide, especially for the accessibility. And talking about accessibility here, when you are talking about digital content and situation of accessibility, so digital content can help a lot. Now we have, like 3 weeks back, we have a platform with the Ministry of Education, CRDP. They create the platform. It's for free for all the
This is for school level application.
Yes, it's for schools. It's for schools, but actually, because it's Corona, many of the digital transformation networks, because also they have PCA, Professional Computer Association, which is the EdTech companies, international companies, and most of them, they provided the content for free, like Rosetta Stone, like Britannica, Edge of Learning, ABC Mouse, Strobis, and many other local companies for free during Corona duration and during Corona period, and in the same time, all the Lebanese, the parents, the university students, the teachers, the schools, the students. So it's available for everyone. And the portal is DL, which stands for Digital Learning.crdp.org. DL.crdp. Have one sign in, and they can access all the resources they need. And this was really a dream for Lebanon, because every school, they have their own, We teach many of the schools, thousands of schools in Lebanon, individually, and this is what in the, let's say, in the backbone of the educational system in Lebanon, because you are repeating the work many times, and there's no teacher the lessons together like we say, one for all and all for one. So you can now it's happening, and this is very important, enforced by Corona, and this will help. Of course, this will help the accessibility very well, because you have all the learning styles, and you can make the assignments, activities. Even there's some, let's say, motor skills. You can have it at home, and at the same time, you can assign the activity from distance learning, and you can give it. So now the situation.
And this is live and active now?
Yes, of course, because as I told you, it's live, the portal is live, and parallel to the Mihi, what they did, and especially at the DOPS, where coaches are working lessons for the national TV, and all the lessons are recorded, so you can replay it again. Also,
and
other
were the accessibility guidelines applied in these facilities?
Actually, now they are working on this, and we are our help in order to do it under a certain level. You know, after all, usually private sector is faster. We have good connections with Father Robert schools, with many of the disabilities schools that provide, especially Al Hadi, and they have now their own plans. And this is what I am talking about. Everyone, when you don't have a national strategic, will go and create his own, especially the private sector, because you know the private sector, it's connected to many responsibilities. It's not the same like the public. Actually, talking also about the ways and the methodology that they did, the Ministry of Education, they adapt paper, and it doesn't work because with Corona, it's very expensive to photocopy, and we are going back, not only doing the books, but also photocopying the agenda and the activities. And from I have to buy a printer in order to print out the agenda for my kids, and it's actually no.
So it was a good leap for Lebanon.
Yeah. So it doesn't work to do it. So paperless is better. Content is better. It can play a very main role in this. And the second way was the TV, of course, but because of the electricity and the local station, so it was not that let's say complete solution, but at least it can put some of the gaps out of the situation, especially
to answer some of the challenges.
Yes, and you don't have internet, but it needs electricity, and of course you need many TVs. Yani one TV is not, if you have a family or more individuals. So the third challenge was the online, and here from your platform and from Maha, I want to raise my maybe let's do it as a petition, as whatever suggestion, recommendation. Minister of Telecom, because all the countries, they provided whitelisting to the platforms, especially for the education platforms. Even answering your question about accessibilities and about the special needs, all our partners, they provided for free during Corona and after Corona. You have in Lebanon around 7,000. So here, this is good to have social responsibilities, to have this situation, but the surprise, or what happens with the Ministry of Telecom, it was really surprising.
The connectivity is a challenge.
and he promised to provide whitelisting. What is whitelisting for the people who don't know what is whitelisting or zero rating? Putting the porter of the Ministry of Education and the educational porters on the whitelisting. So when you use it, you don't charge a data. Don't charge you a data, especially now in Lebanon, it's very expensive. And you have to use videos, you have to use simulation. So this will cost you a lot if you have 2 or 3 or 4 members at the family, especially if the family works like we are doing. So you need, for every individual in the family, you need a data bundle in order to recover. Till now, we don't have whitelisting telecommunication or telecom ministry for the educational portal.
So
This
that's
is the main, but I will also mention for this we provided other the expertise and the people when they wrote the strategic plan, they also recommended the 3 other methodologies, or let's say to do digital learning. One was using the local satellite stations, because you have local satellite, and some of the private schools, they started already. So this is very important. So you can use 10 or satellite one to make awareness for the parents. And now we're starting something called TOP. It's teaching, like teaching of teachers. It's teaching of to involve the parents in this way of delivering, because of course the classroom delivered now from the home. So in the other side, usually the satellite station, they know when the electricity is on and off, because it's very local, maybe in one village, especially for it's a good idea for Lebanon to work through local satellite station, not only one TV and you have to wait if there's electricity or not. So repeat the lessons all the day, so you can catch with the lesson anytime you like. And you can or not or whatever, so you can at least have more options of time to catch with the lessons. The second one, or the fifth one, what is a hybrid learning? Hybrid learning, when you have electricity, you go and see the TV. If you have internet, you go online. If you don't have, you don't. So you can do also hybrid learning because we still have very weak infrastructure. And also one of the main good ideas was the flash memory with a digital expenses. So you even CRDP, they said we are ready to give it to you, so you can put the files on a flash memory disk, plug it to the TV if you have a USB plug inside the TV. If you don't have, you need only a very small receiver, digital receiver, like this, and then you can make it like available for the kids. The last method, it was augmented reality. You have a hard copy of your curriculum and you aligned already what you need. And after, if I have time, I will talk about some tips of the distance learning, because this is very important. What you can do, you can augment. It's very new technology. You can augment the pages of the book from the teacher side or from the school side or from the ministry side, and you can and connect it to accessibility of the digital content you want to show to the students. So this is also a very useful way. It's very new, and it can make the curriculum, the pages of the book, more interactive and more. Of course, it's
really
amazing.
interesting.
It's very interesting. We use it at STEP at AUB, by the way. So
maybe if we get some time left at the end of the session, we can get to it more in detail.
Yes,
because
please.
we still have a session.
Yes, sure. I just want two more good idea. Immersive learning is very important for accessibility. Virtual reality, augmented reality, hologram. It's now very even you have good ways also to approach the student, especially with the accessibility. It's gamification, because most of the curriculum now, because of the pressure inside the house, you need to at least the online and distance learning, and give in like
Creative way.
yes, gamification or something. It's edutainment.
True. Thank you, Mr. Balbaki, for the zoom in on the Lebanese status and challenges. Here, I have to jump to Jeremy. Maybe Jeremy, you can brief us about online education accessibility leading practices. What are the successes, challenges, barriers, and maybe solutions?
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Maha, for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I'll try to explain each one of these in brief, and I tried to actually think about them, not just in terms of what has worked for North Idaho College, but what could potentially be, these are applicable to other institutions as well. So starting with the successes, I think leading the charge with advocacy events like the Able Summit and celebrating Global Accessibility Awareness Day are good ways to kind of really kick things off and be successful. As far as challenges, I think accountability is one of the biggest challenges I see. A gentleman by the name of Jocko Willink, he talks about extreme ownership, and that when a team or institution fails at something, you should be the first one to recognize and express how you could have done things a little differently that may have contributed to the success. You won't likely make that mistake again, for one, and then others will also start reflecting and owning their failures as well. And you can keep that go. It just tends to be sustainable. And even when you have a success, you see people having this mindset focused on how they could have done even better in light of a success. So that's a big problem I see. I know at North Idaho College, where some things get stagnant and people tend to get in this routine of, oh, well, this is how we've always done it. It's safe. And yeah, let's not try anything new because this feels safe. Well, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I kind of think one of those ways to embrace change and is to start embracing accountability and really trying to be accountable for making things better. As far as barriers, a couple that I could broadly identify are trying to get a lot of people to know just a little bit about accessibility. I'm not trying to get everybody to become an accessibility expert, but just trying to gain a little bit of ground in everybody's mind that accessibility is important, and in whatever they're doing, get them to at least start applying it towards whatever field they're in. Also, I'm guilty of actually wasting a lot of time on one person who, say, won't caption their videos. And instead, my time actually could be better utilized by guiding maybe hundreds of others to do it if they just had a little bit of training. And the last point on this question is talking about solutions. I like to just promote accessibility on common ground with each person if I can. For example, I'll talk to the digital marketing folks and try to get them to be more mindful of the semantic markup of their websites, using headings and bulleted lists and using tables as they're intended. And just explaining, hey, if you do this, it's going to help your search engine optimization of your website and your marketing efforts on top of being accessible.
Thank you, Jeremy. There's more? Okay. So back to Lebanon. Rami, I understood that you also had a perspective for the status in Lebanon, successes and challenges from a higher education point of view.
Sure. First, I like the fact how Jeremy insists on making things 1% better. This is an expression from. This is definitely an excellent approach.
We keep on quoting him.
Yes, and it's obviously proving correct. Now, in Lebanon, the online education or technology-assisted education, as we'd like to call it, at least in this period during the pandemic, we call it technology-assisted education because we need to kind of categorize this as different from the real online education. This it started to boom, as I was saying previously, since last October when the roads were closed and when a major number of our students could not reach classrooms. At AUB, what we did is that we switched to online technology assisted modality 4 days after the road closures. That was October 21st. I still remember the day because back then I was in the States. I was actually in Vegas, and I had to cut I was giving a workshop on machine learning, and I had to kind of deliver the workshop and directly take the first plane to go back to Lebanon because the roads were closed and nothing was certain back then. So to be able to do that swiftly, we have built a site that would help instructors move their content delivery modality. If you just Google AUB Teach in Crisis, you'll find this site, which basically contain many different sections, among which is a big accessibility section. And these sections are getting started, which is mainly what are the important resources that you would need to assist you in making your course content accessible from anywhere at any time. The second section was opening the web page here, supported tools. What are the tools that we support at AUB, which facilitate the delivery of your technology enhanced course? The third one is revisiting your assessments to make sure that your assessments actually work for the online environment and they can actually are fair for all types of students, including students with special needs. And then we had a set of bits of knowledge videos, which are short videos compiled as bits of knowledge to kind of deliver, shots of ideas. And then a section about best practices and a very important section about accessibility, which is contains accessibility guidelines and tips to support differently abled students. So on the accessibility section, and since AUB advocates for equal access to education and resources to students, faculty, and staff, all students are eligible to navigate through accessible resources during times of crisis. So this was kind of the guiding principle that we have worked with to make sure that whatever content our faculty members provide to our students, all this content is accessible to all students, including those with special needs and including those with lack of good internet access or good electricity. It's Lebanon at the end of the day. So this site we recommended a questionnaire that would help instructors adapt their lectures and resources to meet the students' need. Some of the questions are things like, do you have reliable internet at home? Or does your computer have a camera in case we need to go live using, let's say, WebEx or any other web conferencing tool? Do you have any accessibility challenges that I would need to know about so that I can adapt the technology enhanced teaching? So for example, do you have visual impairment, color blindness? We can get all this data also from our student affairs office, but this kind of gives a higher level of intimacy between the instructor and her or his students. We ask questions like, do you have any accessibility requests that I would need to know about so that I can adapt the technology enhanced teaching? So and also on this page, you can feel free to navigate this page again. You just need to search for AUB Teach in Crisis. It's the first result on Google. Go to this page and then navigate to the accessibility part of this page, which is mainly what we are providing our instructors and our students, and to make their content accessible during this time. And we've also shown how to create accessible lectures, how to present accessible resources, how to moderate accessible discussion forums, because these are heavily used while you're teaching in distance teaching. How to create accessible assignments, for example, like create accessible documents. So small tips and tricks on how to make things 1% better for different types of students. And we've also followed tips that came from University of Washington. It's called Do It. I'm sure that many of the panelists are familiar with its Do It, Disabilities, Opportunities, Internetworking, and Technology, which is mainly
also a public source.
Yeah, which is mainly a set of recommendations for course web pages and for instructional methods. So for the course web pages, it's mainly about making your web page, your content accessible. And for the instructional methods, it's mainly pedagogical recommendations for instructors on how to moderate their classes, how to provide different options for demonstrating learning, how to provide different options for communicating and collaborating, things that are accessible, how to make instructions and expectations clear for all types of students, etc., etc. So basically, this is what we've been doing at
AUB.
Sorry, Maha.
We're not very far from accessibility to education.
No, we definitely are very far, but then this is more of a journey, not we'll always be far. It's more of a journey that we will always need to be working, because it's more of having all our faculty members always be teaching with accessibility in mind. So yeah, so it's always subject to a lot of improvements and a lot of different bits and pieces here and there to improve the way, or to improve the content that we're providing for our students with special needs.
Thank you, Rami. Miles, here I would have to ask you, having listening to the situation in Lebanon and to the experience Jeremy highlighted, how to transform this experience. What are the applicable leading practices in Lebanon?
Well, we're very fortunate to have on the call Dave Baines, who has worked in Saudi Arabia and other parts of this world. And I just want to say that there are at least 35 Arabic products that are in market. So there are things that you can call upon there. Also, in research that he conducted in this area, he found that most people were using content on Android phones, and that the implementation of accessible technologies is based on UDL, Universal Design for Learning. So the first thing is to look at that and how it can apply to Lebanon. It is quite clear that you need laws and you need cooperation. Listening to Rabi about that, it's obviously very clear. In the UK, we developed the DSA, the Disability Student Allowance for students in universities, which entitled them to have whatever technology they need. And that has been there since the 1990s. So there's a wealth of experience there. Also, we've also instituted in recent days in schools the education healthcare plan. In other words, we joined up the different services because they were disparate, and children with very complex needs, or adults even with complex needs, you need to have everybody in the room at some point. So given the paucity of resources and the lack of overall strategies, then you're having to fight a corner. And so what I would suggest is that you think small, that 1%, exactly as Jeremy was saying. Making small steps can make huge changes. Really, just a small change can increase everybody's ability. in terms of how that applies to your setting in Lebanon, I would suggest that you look to our examples of what we have achieved in a short space of time, particularly in this period of COVID, which has kind of upped the ante a bit in making learning online more accessible. It is quite clear that many packages like Google and Office are contributing greatly to that. But also you need to look at the pedagogy. In other words, it's great to have this accessibility, and I believe, as the speaker said, you should have that in there at the core, not just on the fringe, but at the very beginning, because accessibility is for all. That's a really important point. You get it right for them, you get it right for everybody. And so, from my experience, being able to implement that into the setting requires very much a personal coach or somebody who's able to meet particular needs. It's got to work at the micro level. And having that implementation of the law can actually build changes. On my website, I have using accessible technology, changing one life at a time. Sometimes you need that to make a small change in your environment to make it go. And looking at what other colleagues have said in our UK experience, it's very important that that is dealt with personally. I think any technology, whether it's accessible or not, is not going to fly without some support initially. I could tell you stories about that, but that would take too much time. I will just say accessibility for all and at the core. That is my statement there. Can I just mention one resource, globalsymbols.com. Dave has an international set of symbols. Please make use of the chat window and save it and send it out to people. There's loads of good stuff coming in there. Okay, over to you.
So Jeremy, what about institutions that are new to accessibility? Many people assume it's a 1,000-mile journey, not Jeremy, and it's gonna be expensive. So, what do you think? Does it have to be a 1,000-mile journey? Does it always have to be expensive? Is there an economic way to be inclusive?
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll try and make this brief, just given the time. I have a general answer here that kind of applies to many areas of life. The more you develop skills, the less you actually rely on gadgets. So if we have to make this 1,000-mile journey, then we can try to buy a faster means of travel, or we can actually take our time a little bit to enjoy the walk, the relationships we're building, the sights we're seeing, and the learning that inevitably we'll be subject to along the way. I think actually more value comes from the journey rather than sorry, reading my notes here, but I think value comes from the journey than making yourself 100% compliant as fast as possible. And when I'm there in September, hopefully at the Able Summit, I've got a really good analogy, but time permitting, it won't work right now. My next point on this is assistive technology doesn't always have to be expensive. Again, I've got another story I'll share when I'm there in person. But when assessing for an accommodation, there are many factors that we should account for. I'm a big fan of the SET framework. That's SETT, which stands for Student, Environment, Tasks, and Technology. And the flexibility of the framework allows for the assessor to evaluate each of the 4 criteria in kind of a nonlinear fashion. But the technology is always something that should be considered last when evaluated. Another way of looking at it is if the only tool you have is a hammer, all your problems become nails. So trying to think of I think you had one more question in there, Maha. What was it?
I merged questions, so
yes, I think you were saying, is there an economic way to be inclusive?
Yes.
One of the most luckily I'm brief on this one, but I find one of the most economic ways to be inclusive is to include people with disabilities in the planning phases of the projects, so that you can plan for accessibility before you design, develop, or author whatever you're working on. And also one of the strong recommendations I took from Jennison Ascension was ensuring that people with disabilities are part of the testing QA is something I advise. If you're always trying to catch up, trying to make something accessible after it's already been developed, designed, or written, it's going to be a lot more time involved and, consequently a lot more expensive.
Remedy is always more expensive than just, planning it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Miles, economic way to be inclusive. Do you have an advice on that?
Just repeat the question again, Maha.
Is there an economic way to be inclusive?
Is there any?
We're countries with the essential challenge of funding.
Yes. Well, there's lots of free stuff out there. I could use an analogy about cars, but I don't think it'll fly. You don't have such cars. But if you imagine very small, and that is your free stuff, and then the very big, the most expensive limousine, that would be your Rolls-Royce specialist software solution. So you can introduce those three things very quickly, very easily, straight into the context of your setting, because they're there, they're being built in, and they're being improved at all times. So things like voice to text and screen readers, and I'm just looking at what Dave's written about Dolphin now converted Arabic documents to all formats, including MVDA, which is free screen reader, and so there's a lot of things out there. It's very easy to get sucked into the bright shiny objects, although it's by that I mean very expensive technology. Obviously, that can't work on a systemic basis, sustainable basis, without an awful lot of money. So when we're thinking about small solutions, then we can certainly make a change to people with minor disabilities. But then that would be important to do for a lot of people. You'll change a lot of lives at that level with the free stuff, the Google Type, the Microsoft Office package with accessibility, and some of the free online teaching practices. But you know what misses that equation? People's preferences. And we've all got them. And that's why I say choice is important, so that we provide them with not just one solution, because one size does not fit all, but we give them a range of solutions that can actually help them to pick what they want to use and how they could use it. So I can see that working.
Thank you, Miles. Rami, you have something to add on this point? Rami, still with us?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. My kids are all around the place, so I have to mute when I'm not talking. I definitely totally agree with what both Miles and Jeremy were saying, which is mainly, three main points. One, remedy is much more expensive than, designing it from the initially. Second is that it all boils down to the people doing it. So the more training you give to these people, the more they are willing to invest in their time, the less the economics would happen centrally. And third is utilizing the free tools. Well, in Lebanon, we do have, we are where we are because we are kind of late in this, as opposed to Europe and the States. We do have a lot of gaps and challenges in Lebanon when it comes to accessibility in higher education, or digital accessibility in higher education, such as faculty onboarding. So not a lot actually faculty members can teach with technology, and we are yet to speak about accessibility. So that's by itself is a huge challenge for us. Platforms. So most schools, I think Rabia was kind of touch basing on the platform issue. Most schools do not have the correct platforms. Some universities do not have correct learning management platforms as well. Expertise in the domain. So again, it boils down to people. Both online education expertise, tech expertise, and accessibility expertise. These are not very common in Lebanon and in the region. Lack of regulatory law for digital accessibility. So we don't have things like Section 508, 509, or ADA in Lebanon. We do have a very old law bill, but this, yeah, but this by no means addresses digital accessibility. Internet electricity availability as well, and also access to laptops, webcams, and microphone. Now, we at AUB, what we're doing today is that we're kind of mitigating a lot of these gaps. So, for example, to mitigate the law thing or the regulations, we are integrating ADA into our ADA is American with Disabilities Act. We're integrating these into our quality assurance framework, which is mainly a flavor of quality matters. Exactly, and we're also developing a set of policies. We do have 4 policies drafted. Some of them are in the approval process. Others are, just internal policies. This will ensure that each course that is delivered online addresses to a minimal acceptable level of accessibility before it can be marked as QA passed. Now, is there an economic way to be inclusive? Yes and no. I think a major part of providing accessibility in education and in higher education, again, boils down to the content. So platform readiness is one thing, and this should and can be done because this is a one-time investment. However, the majority of the work lies in the actual content that is being delivered, designed, developed, and delivered. The actual learning experience that the students are being exposed to as well. This is both easy and complicated to achieve. It is easy to achieve because, as Jeremy and Miles were saying, individual efforts and every little effort does make a difference. So individual efforts that it requires is not impossible. Very quick training can be done to people. And it is complicated because the number of individuals who are investing in this effort is huge. We're talking about a huge body of faculty members, and we're talking about a big body of faculty.
Change management perspective.
Of staff. And also, you just added a different dimension here, Ma, which is the change management perspective to that. So in order to be able to achieve this, we are building what we call FDPOE, which Faculty Development Program for Online Education. And this is a 4 to 5 course modules that will be taken by AUB instructors. We are embedding digital accessibility into that so that we can have a mass of people who are ready to develop and to deliver digitally accessible content. So basically, just in a nutshell, yes, it can be, it can be economically, it can be done in an economic way, but it has to be very well thought and designed because it requires the effort of a huge body of people, which include all the faculty members.
Thank you, Rami. Here I have to apologize from our attendees. We are exceeding the time of the session. The discussion is very, very interesting, and it raises questions for us to address in future sessions. I'll wrap up quickly in 2 minutes my last question, and then we are receiving a lot of questions on the chat. So let's wrap up in 2 minutes and summarize what would be the low-hanging fruits. What are the practical ways or tips to get started? Here, I want to ask first Jeremy and then Rabia. Jeremy.
Okay, so low-hanging fruit. My recommendation is kind of something I did when I started at North Idaho College in creating access on one, or create a, matrix. On one axis, I have importance, and the other I have quickness. And I would then divide my projects into one of those 4 quadrants. So whatever is highly important and extremely quick to develop deserve my immediate attention. Next was something of low importance but extremely quick to develop. Third prioritization was high importance but slow to develop. And fourth, which I actually may never get time to do, is projects that are low importance and slow to develop. So kind of coming up with a practical way to prioritize some of your projects.
Makes sense. That's it. Thank you, Jeremy. Rabia. So quickly, what would be practical ways for us to get started in delivering accessible online learning in Lebanon?
First of all, Rami had just summarized all the situation because the right way, especially at the university, because it's more acceptable and the challenges. Actually, he mentioned something very important. During this week, the online will be discussed on the parliament. So we have now more than 2 parliament members. This is Bahia Hariri and Trabulsi, who just recommended and suggested accreditation for the legalization for the distance learning. Be very clear with you. Even if Corona stopped or not.
It should be a requirement there.
Yeah, of course. There's some, let's say there's some like not barriers, but there's some stops like if they reduce the manpower and replaced by learning machine, and there's a resistance. And we have to be honest with you. Everything that you can do now, it's just for improving and developing our curriculum in the right way. Because if we agree or not, learning, we are going to flip the classroom. We are going to change management, as you said, from the top to the. Everybody will be involved. So the only way is to work with this edtech innovations. Is very powerful, especially in content, align it and curriculum mapping for even international suppliers, and of course, apps and edtech initiatives in Lebanon.
Thank you, Rabia. I forgot to mention that there's also GAAD Daniel helping us manage this session. And are we ready to address Q&A to start questions and answers? GAAD, Farah?
Maha, the Q&As are available.
How can the panelists see them? Okay, Q&A, here we go. Okay, found them. Grace Khawan, many therapists are currently refusing to carry out any therapy or assistance to children with learning disabilities online because of limitations in the platform and the inability to carry out sessions and activities similar to a face-to-face context. Okay, I think that was a comment. What about online speech therapy and psychomotor therapy for children with learning disabilities? What platforms are there other than Zoom, Skype, etc.? Maybe Miles can help us with this question.
Well, it's if you're talking about confidential assessments where it's very much one-to-one work, then I would suggest that properly closed systems, like particularly, it's difficult to do it with video, to be honest with you, because you'd have to use FaceTime or use it on a device-to-device basis. So it needs to be locked in. Obviously, that can be a very private thing. As regards using those other tools, certainly Signal, which is essentially an individual most secure setup. I'm not sure if it actually does video. I'll just check now from my phone. Sorry, I just probably need to just see that, because that may be another way that that can happen. Converse to that argument, there are people doing DSA assessments online. That's been agreed by our government to do. No, it's just purely text, so that isn't going to work either. I mean, there has to be an honest recognition that people in the room is needed. You can't do this remotely as well. You might get some things, but you won't get all of it. So I think the best time is probably just on one-on-one sessions linked to the most secure platform, which I think would be FaceTime at the moment.
Thank you, Miles. There's also another question. I think it could go to you. Do you have any recommendations regarding assistive technologies at the workplace? How can we embed such culture in companies for people with disabilities needing AT to work and to be?
In the chat window, there's a fact file that Barter have done, which lists a lot of contacts of people to go to. So do save that chat window and send it out to participants. But there's a page on our website, AT in the Workplace. It's on the front end of the banner, barteronline.org.
Okay,
and you'll find information there. Yeah, AT in the Workplace fact file.
Sounds good.
And there's lots of help there, lots of suggestions.
Thank you, Miles. What about public schools in Lebanon? Ra'ed Hassan is asking, infrastructure, government spending, what are the challenges? Who can answer this?
I think Rabia would be best to answer the question.
Rabia, the question is, what about public schools in Lebanon? Infrastructure and government spending.
Actually, the infrastructure is not to the level that we say it's. Imagine now our connection. We have high speed and DSL, but actually it's not reliable, and we need to. The Ministry of Telecom, they are working on a plan for 2021 in order to develop the infrastructure the right way. And before
there is a plan and funding in place.
Yeah, they started already, and there's a tender already with Huawei, and they are preparing the stations for the fast internet. But actually, it come very late. Yeah, this is the problem. But yes, it's running right now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rabia. Any other questions? Because I read the other comments, they're just comments. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? I think that's about it for today. I just want to thank everybody for joining this valuable discussion, and I want to thank our esteemed panelists. I also want to thank the ABLE team, specifically Farah Aid, who pushed this session to be, and Danielle for helping us. Also Farah Faqih for the American Sign Language. Thank you so much, Farah, for jumping in to help. And hope to see you soon in other activities. We will be bringing you soon, definitely, more discussions. Is there anyone that would like to add a comment? Okay, just because I heard. So that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you all. God bless.
Thank you. God bless too.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.